you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. It's 'cause you are. They'll gladly stagnate a living wage, snap the chains, bury it. Labor slaves in rusty cages dragged behind a chariot, led by Mr. Racial Jungle, Joseph or Iscariot, fighting over scraps as they barrage us all with variants and BuzzFeed clickbait, straight until we're paralyzed, trying to distract us from the concentration camps that Joe had swore he'd close but only chose to amplify, where they got 50-something kids in cages made for 5 to occupy. And no, she hasn't seen the camps, but Harris swears they're paradise. She tells us the facilities are safe, and that right down to the women, they are regularly sterilized. Then she throws her head back and she proceeds to laugh, that sort of heartless cackle you'd expect from someone working steadfastly on behalf of the virus and a Congress full of parasites. And where was I? I was busy cashing every blue check, demonstrating plainly all the narratives expected from the verified. I was busy breeding verbal leeches by the terabyte. Train them to exsanguinate the wealthy while they sleep at night. Bleed the oil barons dry and barren, say they showed us how to share and now we share alike. Tell them I contracted rabies from a feral mic. Now I'm just another species losing sleep to noise pollution and these glaring lights, forced to change its habits and adapt to just survive. But now it's safe to say that some of us are thriving in the moment, throwing shit on presidential homes beneath the Paris skies. So if you feel like you're just powerless, I guess you bought the lie. But I can tell they're petrified of our collective might, 'cause I can hear those gentrifiers weeping at the sight of our collective rights. And I only can imagine the intensifying fear of knowing revolution's near, and all that's left to do is simply wallow in the thick anticipation of a rabid bite. And baby, one day you can ask your leaders just what that was like before you grab a slice. So if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. Honey, if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. See, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, and tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark, because you aren't, because we aren't. You see, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and make you build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, where they'll tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark, because you aren't, because we aren't. False alarm. I thought that help was here, but it was my own reassurance bouncing round 100,000 times in my own ecosphere. If every time you speak you keep it off the record, consequently you can keep your record clear. And if you mute the speech that shakes your frail beliefs, you only seek to insulate your image and continue down the stream in the direction clout and credit steers. Directly from your mouth into Am I the Asshole Reddit's ears. Directly back into the greasy pockets of some Gates Foundation financiers. And then directly back into the frantic final thoughts of early trial Neuralink volunteers, staring at the numb and mumbling vacancies where recently had been their peers. half of whom are glitching with the memory stuck on pause, and half have zero fucking clue just who they are or why they're here. It's been said that fear is all we have to fear, but that was back before the basosphere condenser came along, distilling concentrated fear that's diamond pure, crystal clear, oppressor strong, and woven into every single article you read and song they let you hear. And then Elon heard that Jeff enhanced our fears by 86%, and he said, hold my beer. And not a single sheep among the herd would turn their head or say a word, cause they were all too busy begging for the shears, begging for the muzzle, happy just to guzzle, feed, and watch a screen for all their years. Man, to each his own, can't afford a home, but they'll let you have your cozy little ecosphere. Where there among your own devices you can break the seventh seal, overthrow the oracles and slay the seer. All the tomes were burned and all the lips were seared. Shut your eyes and all our lives just disappear. Now blink 'em twice. Welcome to your ecosphere.
I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. I thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry.
My favorite songs don't hit the same way. I get to the end of a 4-minute track and I'm only looking back thinking, what did they actually say? So I try to sit down with my wife and watch TV, but I just see propaganda elevating the police in the simplest of sitcom banter, and tiny little altars full of offerings to corporate masters in every well-planned wide pan shot of the name brand stocking up the pantry. Pull back one long tracking shot out to the garage to the logo on the Camry. Nice tight shot of the Camry, close-up view of the Camry, slow pan up on the Camry, long slow zoom to the unmoving human who's up in the front with the tube pumping fumes to him straight from the back of the Camry. Ashamed he just could not provide for himself, let alone for his family. It's a blue pill mindset that spent 2020 making dance beats.
I think I liked it better being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride, and thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry.
Ignorance is bliss, which explains why a lot of us are so fucking happy. Quick to take the trip for all its trappings. Never one to ask what's up, what's going on, or God forbid what's happening. A lot of us would strap into the ride and then spit right in the eye of the guy whose job it is to snap your fastenings. But maybe we're all born with that capacity. Maybe each of us comes standard with humor, compassion, malice, and audacity. Some of us are blind to the system, but some see it fine and say this is how it has to be. Some of us can stare wide-eyed at a nationwide human catastrophe and only offer platitudes and recipes. And I wish that I could tell myself that nothing's worth obsessing past my everyday necessities. I wish that I could cry fake news over anything that threatened me, tune out our abuses and consume a little levity. Wish that I could offer up my son a smoother destiny. Wish I had some better lessons for how best to answer questions for the things I've been perpetually questioning. But I'm too busy looking at our leaders, wondering what I might be missing from their messaging. Trying to find the reasoning to let 250,000 people meet an early reckoning. And even though I know the truth, it's hard to swallow something that's so literally sickening. Hope is ever dwindling, COVID ever beckoning. Winter slows your breathing, but your pulse is ever quickening. Even though I know the truth, it's hard to keep listening. I'm done with my epiphany, my innocence is blistering. I'd like to think I'd taste the earth before I'd ever kiss the ring. Hard to speak the truth and harder still to keep listening.
Sometimes I think I miss being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. Thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. Both bleed us so dry. Both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry. And when you dream, you're by yourself. Don't know the streets where you'll find yourself. Go back to sleep, don't mind yourself. Both hands on your head. Go back to sleep, don't mind yourself. Both hands on your head. Both hands on your head.
Money's talking while hunger prays. Bunch of Nazi-loving child fuckers run the state. 911 is on some 1-800-CIA, and plastic pundits pump your trust and fund your shallow graves. It is malice just for malice sakes. Congress houses wealthy corpses, breathing hexes, arming forces, then spilling out 1 million greedy snakes from all their orifices, coursing down the Congress floor, across the aisle, out the door to curse 1 million more before they've run their bloody courses. Clip your wings like Klippenstein, then out and burn your sources. God collapse at times is hard to witness, other times it's gorgeous. There's something satisfying in the act of watching something greedy choke upon the very thing on which it gorges. And there is something humbling blooming in the thought that once the dust is settled,
Who are these people?
Hey,
everyone.
I have to make sure Twitchit is working so I can get people's lovely chat messages in here. But anyway, Collin's back, everyone. Look, it's Collin. Collin had to take a sabbatical and go see some family, so, you know, nice that he's back. But anyway, how have you been otherwise, friend?
Kind of a cold,
That
scratchy
sucks.
throat. Hopefully it's not COVID, but
Yeah, hopefully it's not that monkeypox either. Like, that's gonna go bad.
You
You
know,
know?
I think that was from the plane yesterday, just a dry air.
I mean, you were in a
sorry,
tube full of demons? Sorry, I'm quoting, what is that? Is it, I want to say it's Creflo Dollar, but it's the other one, I think. Popoff.
What's his name?
Like, he was trying to, like, defend having a private plane. You can't be in a tube full of demons. Like, anyway, you know. But yeah, welcome everybody to INN News. Let's just refresh that and see if that fixes it. There we go.
Well, how have you been, Reef? And how was last week?
I've been all right. You know, everyone's kind of dealing with some stressful stuff, so, you know. Nice to see some new people in the chat. Hello there, Sunshine. That's literally their name.
Yep,
So,
Gamer, great to see you.
What's up, Gamer? Feel free to share with people, you know, as always. Get as many people in the chat as always. More people, the better the party, as they say. But anyway, I'm trying to think if there's anything important to cover before we get into stories. I can't think of any. People should go down in the description below. If you look for that indienews.network link down there, people should go there and click Meet the Members and find Warrens and give that guy a few dollars if you haven't already. You know, he could really use it. So,
for those of you who may know Warren, also known as Extra Bulla, he's taking a little bit of sabbatical right now. Like,
yeah.
I think many of us are just going through some issues. Don't want to say too much. You can actually watch his stream that he did. I think it was on Sunday.
Something like that.
Kind of describing what he's going to be up to, you know, so yeah, show him some love. Think of him, message him, you know, we miss him, but hopefully he'll be back in a lot better shape than he left. So
right,
give him some support, please.
That would be nice. It's almost like us grifters don't do well with getting the money to us, you know. So you know, and no one has a fucking job, you know, as Jimmy would say at the end of his videos. So, but yeah, no, definitely go support Warren if you can. That would be greatly appreciated. But anyway, you ready for stories? You ready? Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna try and fly through this episode because Reef, our tech magician, has other things he needs to do tonight. So I'm gonna try and keep it short and sweet tonight.
Yep.
So
try to keep it to an hour. We'll see. Normally goes on after us and trying not to step on other members. So we'll see how that goes. But anyway, so our first story for this evening, right? You need that, and the people need to see it. Will the NLRB deliver a victory for Amazon and overturn historic union election? What's your thoughts just right out the bat? What's your bets, Collin?
Probably, honestly.
Okay.
But I can explain more after. But...
Cool. Okay, there we go. So following the biblical battle in which David bested Goliath, imagine if the defeated warrior had petitioned the government to redo the fight because he claimed it wasn't fair. Essentially, that is what is playing out in Phoenix, Arizona right now, far away from the public eye. Amazon is pulling out all the stops to reverse the outcome of an election at its JFK 8 fulfillment center in Staten Island, New York, where workers voted to unionize earlier this year. Like other major U.S. corporations, the retail and technology behemoth is fighting all attempts of its employees to form unions. Increasingly, this appears to be a losing battle, as organized labor, whose numbers and influence have been waning for many years, is making a comeback. And with each victory, the anti-union dam these corporate giants have built is showing cracks. The fact that more than 100 Starbucks stores across the country have filed for unionization, the fact that Uber and Lyft drivers have been involved in organizing, and the fact that fast food workers have been involved in organizing has absolutely encouraged more activity among not only the Amazon workers of Staten Island, but in other Amazon facilities in other parts of the country, said Kent Wong, director of the University of California, Los Angeles Labor Center. The victory at JFK 8 was among the most important wins so far, which is why it's not surprising that Amazon is trying to fight it. The company, which ranks second on the Forbes Fortune 500 list, claims that the vote was not fair, and employees associates with the Amazon labor union impeded their colleagues' free right to choose whether to unionize. Now, Amazon has taken its grievance before the National Labor Relations Board, the NLRB, a federal agency whose mandate is to protect the rights of workers and bring complaints against offending parties. The case is being heard by the regional NLRB office in Arizona. What is surprising, however, is that nobody is paying attention to the hearings, which began on June 13th. The lack of attention is noteworthy because the ultimate ruling, which experts believe will eventually be made by the entire NLRB, could have significant ramifications for organized labor in the U.S. If the Staten Island victory stands, it will be a huge boost to Amazon workers and other workers across the country, Wong said. And Risa Leibowitz, a professor of labor and employment law at Cornell, called the initial election a huge victory that could be amplified if the ALU were able to build on it and engage in collective bargaining to gain a good contract for the employees. So, thoughts so far, Collin?
Well, here's what I'm wondering, because like we do shit on Chris Smalls quite a bit, but I think it's more of a criticism versus shitting on him. I'm just wondering if I've been kind of off of Twitter for like the last week, or a little over a week now, and I haven't really been like as into news as I usually am. But has Chris Smalls mentioned anything about this on social media?
I saw one thing about the hearings from him. One tweet.
Right. So my thing is this, like, it just makes me wonder, because the idea of organizing is thinking long term. Like, so the idea that this is what, the NLRB is doing shouldn't be a surprise to the ALU. So, like, how are they strategizing to combat against this is what I'm wondering. And from what I can sense, and people in the chat, those of you who are on, you can please clarify me if I'm wrong. It doesn't seem like they're mentioning anything as far as how they're going to counter this, especially if the court decision is overturned. So now, to be fair, they may not be saying anything publicly, just to kind of protect themselves, which can be completely valid. But it does beg the question of, what are they doing to counter this? But then more importantly, what are they trying to try and add more unionization among Amazon warehouses across the country? That I don't think we haven't completely heard from, the ALU entirely, if my understanding and my memory serves me correctly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, it seems like, specifically Smalls's like actions seem a little misguided to me when this is also happening, you know. And
we'll talk about that more later. So I don't want to necessarily go into
step on it a little bit, but
a bit more. I think we'll expand upon that. I think definitely in that segment, but that's just kind of like my wondering in regards to all of this.
For sure. So like, do you know much about the NLRB? Like,
not really.
Okay, so this article wants to explain how it works a little bit. So before it can do that, the union has to survive Amazon's challenge. Either employees or unions may file objections with the regional NLRB office following a disputed election. In this case, Amazon is objecting to the certification of the result of the JFK 8 election. And since the Brooklyn NLRB office is named in Amazon's filing, the regional hearings are taking place in Phoenix. How? Okay, sure. The regional's director's job is to determine if the election took place under laboratory conditions, a legal standard that the NLRB uses to describe an election that, as much as possible, achieves a situation where employees can vote freely and uninhibitably with regard to their choice about whether to be unionized, Leibowitz said. Should either party object to the regional director's decision, they have the option to appeal to the full board in Washington. If the director sides with the union and the board either chooses not to review the decision or upholds it, the result of the election will be certified. If the regional or national board chooses to sustain Amazon's objection, then the remedy would be to hold a second election. Judging by its history of anti-union tactics, if the election results were certified, Amazon will likely do whatever it can to delay collective bargaining efforts by ALU, according to Leibowitz. This could then result in an unfair labor practice complaint being brought by the NLRB. So, while the public is largely unaware of the proceedings in Phoenix, they have attracted their share of controversy, as well as attention from politicians from both sides of the aisle. Even before the hearings began, Amazon accused the NLRB General Counsel's Office of bias because of an unfair labor practice case it pursued against Amazon in March of 2022. In the injunction, the General Counsel seeks reinstatement and lost wages for an employee it says was wrongfully fired by Amazon for union activities. The company claims it fired the employee because of his abusive behavior toward coworkers during pro-union protests. For Republican legislators, Senator Richard Burr and Mike Braun and Reps Virginia Fox and Rick Allen agree with Amazon's characterization. In a letter to NLRB General Counsel Jennifer Abruzzo, they write that the employee was fired not for his labor protests, but rather for hurling misogynistic and sexist threats at a coworker. They also suggest that the board's filing of the petition a week before a union election at Amazon's Staten Island warehouse was an attempt to influence unduly the outcome of the election. So the timing of this filing and the accusation of undue influence are crucial. According to Leibowitz, Amazon is relying heavily on alleging that the General Counsel interfered with laboratory conditions by seeking an injunction. Meanwhile, Democrats have publicly supported the ALU. Senator Bernie Sanders and Kristen Gillibrand wrote to Amazon CEO Andy Jassy in June, urging him to drop his objection. It is clear, they said, the Amazon is refusing to recognize a legitimate and an overwhelming union election. If Amazon can spend over $4 million in a single year on union busting and $213 million on your compensation, it can afford a workforce that can collectively bargain for better wages, better benefits, safer working conditions, and reliable schedules. As for these ongoing hearings, it does not seem that Amazon has been all that successful in convincing the NLRB that the union is interfering with the employees' free choice, said Steve Abraham, a professor of employment law at State University of New York, Oswego. For both Amazon and the ALU, the protracted legal battle is also trial in the court of public opinion. Though the retail giant is currently viewed favorably by 60% of Americans, some studies indicate that popularity is on the decline. Furthermore, 75% say that Amazon workers need union representation. The company seems to prefer that this case attracts as little attention as possible. As they petitioned to close the NLRB hearings to the public, their request was ultimately denied. The more information that comes out that sheds a negative light on Amazon, the worse it's going to be for Amazon's public image, said Abraham. In that regard, at least things are going the way of Amazon, which must be delighted that the media is largely ignoring the hearings so far. So, I mean, yeah, what's your summary so far?
I mean, it's going, all of this, I think, is going as, I think we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
It's going as expected.
Pretty much.
media is not covering it. Bigger independent media channels, as far as I know, are not necessarily covering this either.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, like Breaking Points, I think was among the first that had Chris Smalls on, when he got fired from Amazon. And I don't think they've had him on back since, they won unionization at the Factory 8 in JFK 8.
Right.
In Staten Island. But I think, especially in regards to this, you would think that they'll be continuing.
This would be giving, more of his, like, and I haven't seen this talked about even at his other appearances that he's been making recently, or in any of the publicity that he's done. He didn't bring it up at the White House,
No.
So, like,
so it kind of goes to my wondering of, like, what's the end game here? What's the long-term plan? It's just the idea to me that seems like, we won unionization at this one place. Great.
Right.
And let's try and get some more. Like, okay, great. Well, how do you plan to do that? And how do you plan to counter against Amazon, for what they're doing right now? I would expect that the ALU would not be aware that Amazon would essentially be coming after them. So how are you going to counter against that? But I feel like if this were to go back to a vote, I'm not sure if it's going to really activate the factory workers in the same way as it did maybe initially, especially given Amazon's antics and how they might try to, like, coerce people to not, attempt to unionize. So I feel like it might just give that, like, it might be more depressing, if anything else, if they continue to push this longer. Like, I could see how workers can easily get discouraged if, they don't have the right leadership or the right encouragement to keep going. Like, so far, I'm not necessarily hearing anything on the ground that kind of dictates that,
how they're going to fight this case, or right.
And I just feel like this whole thing is just kind of built on Chris Smalls' shoulders, essentially. And it's like, that really shouldn't be the case. It should be held among the factory workers there. So, like, if they're being encouraged to push forward, that's one thing. But I don't have any indication that that's happening. So it just seems like Chris Smalls is essentially like the figurehead of this whole thing. And some of his actions that we've seen, like in the last few months, and what he's showing within the last week, which we're going to report on in a minute, seem kind of like counter to what is happening in this story.
So we'll get to that. As this is happening, meanwhile, in the Legion of Doom, the International Federation of Teachers. Collin, you're a teacher. Have you heard of this organization at all?
It's actually Illinois Federation.
Illinois, is it?
Yeah.
I thought it was international.
Affiliated with the AFT, the American Federation.
American, right? Who put on this event, essentially?
So basically, this is like the National Union for Teachers, essentially.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So,
and we have shut down Amazon. Chris Smalls, who's here, and he's giving a speech here. Did you know who else showed up to this? There's quite a few people.
Because I sent you the pictures. So.
Yes. So we'll get to a few of those. None other than Sneaky Snake Senator Warren. Who said thank you to every educator who is here. You deserve to teach in schools with adequate safety measures, resources, a fair wage, to be empowered and trusted to teach the truth in the richest nation on earth. Teachers deserve better. Lovely words from Senator Warren. Wish there was action. Right. So guess who else showed up? None other than the FLOTUS herself. A doctor. She's a doctor. Jill Biden. Jill Biden? It's weird that her name's it's like Joe and Jill. It just shouldn't be the same. Like too similar. But she said, we believe there is something profoundly optimistic about education. To do this service in itself is an act of hope, and we need that hope more than ever. There are more. This is the AFL-CIO president, Liz Schuler, right? There are more than 12 million of us. Think about what we could do if we harnessed all that power. This is Senator Marty Walsh, or Secretary Marty Walsh, right? Yeah.
Former Boston mayor.
Right.
My mayors.
With the president of the Illinois Federation of Teachers. So, what's up, Yipper? Yipper made it in chat. Ghost starts here. Nice to see the fam show up. So here's Senator Markey, right? We need to protect second graders, not the Second Amendment. Yes, thank you, Senator Markey. He's where? Boston, or the other guy's Boston, right?
Massachusetts.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is also happening at the same time, right? The New York Magazine is putting out this expose on Christian Smalls himself, giving him his own little Rolling Stones cover here. It's nice, you know. And they did a kind of a whole little story about it. So Chris Smalls became the new face of labor when he spearheaded a unionization drive at an Amazon packing facility in Staten Island. Now he is trying to replicate that success across the country. You know, this was July 18th, if anyone wanted to know the date. And when were these? The 15th, right? So this happened after. So they continue. Smalls formed the Amazon Labor Union in an audacious attempt to reform the second largest private employer in America. He's since been celebrated by everyone from President Biden to Jesse Jackson as the prime author and strategist of what the New York Times called one of the biggest victories for organized labor in a generation. Now, Collin, when you see those names, do you think progress is happening? Because I sure don't.
No, absolutely not. And, you know, I just feel like that. I mean, I kind of take personally as a teacher, but I take it more personally because I think as a teacher, you know, we've just been getting a lot of lip service more so during the pandemic and since, just as far as how we really appreciate teachers, how we really need our teachers. Meanwhile, teachers are leaving the field in a faster clip than they ever have. And so really, it's not necessarily the time to, with the niceties in terms of like, you're doing a good job, thank you for your service and all that kind of stuff. We understand you don't get paid well and all that kind of stuff. So great, you know that. So what are you going to do to encourage teachers to stay in the profession? You know, and this is kind of where I've had my issues with Dr. Jill Biden for the longest, being that she is a teacher herself. I feel like, and people are like, oh, well, she's currently teaching, I think at Virginia Community College, so she doesn't necessarily have as much time as previous first ladies to have like something that they can like, a project that they can work on during the tenure of the president. Fine, I can totally get that. But as a teacher, I would think that, especially knowing the reality of what teachers are going through right now and how many teachers are burnt out and wanting to leave the profession, I feel that she could be speaking more about that as far as, you know, as First Lady, this is what I'm proposing that our politicians do to help teachers, you know, stay in the field. Like, I don't know, maybe canceling, you know, student loans for teachers, maybe, you know, working towards giving them higher raises, maybe, you know, giving them more supports, especially in low income areas, you know, where they're able to teach and not have to worry about getting like extra supplies for students. I don't know, like, even if at minimum you say something to that effect and not necessarily mean it, I think for most people, it would still wouldn't be good enough for me. But I think for most people, that would kind of give the illusion of, oh, this person really cares, and maybe it could be worthwhile staying in the profession. But having all this lip service in terms of, oh, great job, teachers, we need you, thank you so much, and then nothing's happening.
Yeah.
I think it's in Florida. I think I read this last night. Where I think in Florida, I think there's I have to check the
it was like 9,000, like I think, crazy like that, right?
10,000 teacher vacancies that are still open, in the entire state right now, looking for those positions to be filled by, I guess, next month, since I guess you guys go back in August.
Yeah, I think.
So, so what's going to happen to those teachers who are going to be in higher than normal classrooms? Probably some teachers may have to teach a subject that they're not certified to teach.
Right.
Still in the midst of COVID, so I don't know. It just feels like, again, just a lot of pandering and kind of lip service, which I think from many teachers, that might be enough, at least just as far as the words of the appreciation. But I'm also sure that many of them would also prefer the action too. And I haven't heard any of that, in years, but I think more especially now in this.
So it continues a little bit. So the ALU is part of a burgeoning movement led by young workers instead of professional activists, and without support from traditional unions whose bureaucratic professionalism and non-confrontational tactics are considered by some stale and ineffective. Who's the other ones you talking to, New York Mag? But this is Indie News replying, Indie Left News, whom the editors of New York Magazine and its owners, to be perfectly fair, would love to see co-opted and disappear. So you'll give it a pat on the head and never cover the union busting until it's all over and the workers are screwed. Virtue signaling woke libs who side with management. So, yeah, I mean, of course. I love how it's like, who's bureaucratic? Yeah, they're talking about the AFL-CIO here, like anyone connected with that, pretty much, and their professionalism and non-confrontational tactics. So Smalls calls this the new school labor movement, and he's its most visible practitioner. Now his task is to prove that his union could replicate its first win. He dreams of organizing every U.S. Amazon facility. That's hundreds of thousands of workers. And you will question and undermine him at every turn, smiling and saying, "Aw shucks, too bad, because it doesn't affect you and you really don't give a F. Or you'd have covered this long before now. The damn union vote was 3.5 months ago. Where the fuck have you clowns been?" So, yeah, I mean, little late to the party, New York Mag, for sure. But, so as the AO, this is the one I wanted to kind of focus on, because I think it does showcase what elites think about this tactic and how they think it's working. Right? So as the ALU's leader, it is Small's job to use his charm and clout to raise funds, corral sympathetic politicians, attract new members, and put pressure on Amazon to capitulate to the union's demands, which none of that really does, other than maybe sympathetic politician corralling, and new member attracting. But I don't think it does either of those if it looks like you're not actually for the people anyway. So that you're just using your charm and clout, to raise funds.
Right.
That's their first part of the sentence is,
Right.
So
it's what I've said regarding him, same thing regarding Matthew Ho.
Right.
Who is the organization that's backing you up?
Yes.
So with Chris Smalls, yeah, in theory, the LU is backing him up, but more so the workers. Where are they in all of this? We reported on, I think maybe now over a month ago now, how there was a similar story where I forgot his name now, but he was trying to organize and was fired. Has Chris I believe in that when we read it that Chris Smalls, I think, reached out to him or whatever. I think, I want to be fair in this, but where is that going as far as this worker? So, but I think all I'm seeing is Chris Smalls like doing events like these, cheesing it up, taking pictures of celebrities and whatever else. And that may be okay. And like people, and I know people have been coming at us hard as being like, well, he needs to have the visibility and like that's necessary.
Right. Like,
sure, he needs the visibility, but he needs to be telling off these people in their face.
Yes.
Not hobnobbing with them for favors to raise money for ultimately him.
Well, and he doesn't realize that like rubbing elbows, some of that elbow gets on you,
Right.
Like,
and so
and like they continue.
If you ever were to have an interview with him, like that's something I will ask. Is like, where are the workers' voices in all of this?
Well, and why is he the only voice of the ALU?
Right.
There were multiple members who got that win at JFK 8. It wasn't just Smalls. It would have been taken a team effort. Where are they? Why aren't they going on shows and going places to talk about this? Why is no one speaking to them? And is it hopefully it's because they're actually busy. Hopefully.
Right.
But like, New York Mag continues with like, by making himself as well known as possible. In other words, Small hopes to expand the size and power of his union. Those two aren't causation and correlation don't compute here. Like, in my opinion, like making yourself as well known as possible doesn't necessarily expand your size and expands the union's power. Like, if anything, it puts a target on you, and they just had to dismiss you. And the fact that where are you going? Who are you talking to? Jill Biden, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders, AOC. You've now made good job. You've now made the union a left-wing ideal.
Right.
There goes all those like people who were on the fence. If you were against those like same like establishment parties, if you were openly against Biden and his anti-union tactics, or that AOC didn't show up and didn't deserve that win, like you began to, you were doing the right thing to start off with. Like, those politicians, you don't need to give them a mic. It's your mic. Like, anyway.
It's frustrating because I think we've seen this for the last few months, since April, like where this is heading, and it's just kind of, it's following up on what we've been saying this whole time. It's just the idea of Chris Smalls, becoming the celebrity, but then there's no substance to what he's doing anymore. Right. And then like, and God forbid if like the unionization plans at JFK 8 fall through,
right?
What's that going to do for him?
Right. I mean, they're treating you like the Justin Bieber of unions. You show up just to be a pretty face for them. Right. Like, they're using you, and you feel like you're using them. That's not how the game is played. Like, you're going to the American Federation of Teachers while they fucking do their, like, the standard national officers get reelected, and they pass resolutions that, like, don't really, we'll get to it. You know what?
It's kind of funny that Chris Smalls went to this, because many districts, depending on their union bylaws or whatever, depending on the state, are not allowed to organize. They're not allowed to protest.
Yeah.
Like in DC, I'm not able, to protest.
Right.
Like that. Like, I think it's kind of ironic that you're going to this, and Chris Smalls is essentially saying, you need to organize and all this kind of stuff, which hypothetically is a good thing. And I think as teachers should be happening.
Right.
But many teachers can't do that.
And the teachers union has been notoriously bad at actually giving teachers what they actually need. Like, and that's been that way since my mother was a teacher. Like, they barely will fight for better wages ever. Like, they're constantly on the side of education boards. Like, anyway, this was in Boston. So the 1.7 million member American Federation of Teachers wrapped its 87th biannual convention today, with union delegates voting overwhelmingly to re-elect President Randy Weingarten, Secretary of Treasury Frederick Ingram, and Executive Vice President Evelyn DeJesus. Over 4 packed days, 3,000 delegates debated and passed resolutions on a range of issues, from addressing the promise of public education to advocating for living wages, to combating the effects of climate change to tackling the student debt crisis. They heard from high-profile guests and speakers, including Dr. Jill Biden, Senator Elizabeth Warren, Secretary of Labor Marty Walsh, National PTA President Nathan Monell, the Reverend Dr. Otis Moss III of Chicago's Trinity United Church of Christ, League of United Latin American Citizens CEO Cindy Benavides, and Trade Union of Education and Science Workers of Ukraine Vice President Olga Shabaniak. Ukrainian names are always hard to pronounce. So the union launched a member poll, the first report of its teacher and school staff shortage task force, in a landmark campaign, What Kids and Communities Need. AFT President Randy Weingarten said our convention theme was reclaiming our future. It had a theme. It's like prom. It was about lifting up our members for their incredible work, making sure they felt seen and heard, and ensuring they left Boston with the tools to put their values into action and help make their kids' patients and community lives better every single day. Our delegates and communities put in the work on the issues keeping families up at night, from climate change to accessible health care to the crushing crisis of student debt to the terrifying safety issues plaguing too many workplaces. This year was an important reminder of the AFD's foundations in democracy and our commitment to union work, to stand up and be counted, to live our convictions, and to engage and not withdraw. So, Weingarten, who taught social studies and civics at Clara Boughton High School in Brooklyn, New York, was reelected to an 8th term. I don't really care about much of this, so I probably should just skim through most of it. I did want to look at... So, yes, delegates passed a range of resolutions, including for community schools, helping students thrive in our schools and communities, resolving that the AFT will advocate for funding at the federal level dedicated specifically for creating additional community schools, and supporting the hiring of community school directors, coordinators to lead the critical work of aligning community services with family and student needs. Building a better bridge between learning and work through CTE, internships, and apprenticeships. Resolving to embrace career and technical education as a system of career advising, career-corrected learning, followed by an employer-facilitated transition to work and or further education tied to a career. Yeah, free internships. Specifically for schools, probably.
Yeah.
So, a special order of business to adopt the AFT's Teacher and School Staff Shortage Task Force report, which is a culmination of in-depth member surveys, multiple listening sessions, numerous virtual and in-person task force meetings, input from top researchers, the hard work of the AFT elected leaders and staff, and the guidance of AFT national officers. Did it say anything about like what that actually, to adopt the Teacher and School Staff Shortage Task Force report? What does that even mean?
So basically, I think they're essentially going to study, like, as I mentioned earlier, just teachers leaving.
Gotcha.
And how that's affecting schools, basically.
Makes sense. Addressing staffing shortages in the healthcare workforce. Oh, I didn't even realize. So, pledging the AFT develop and implement a strategy with its national and state leaders for state laws that mandate staffing ratios or safe patient limits in at least 5 states by 2025, and to support the work of its affiliates to address workplace violence and legislation through collective bargaining and other state and local work of healthcare affiliates. School meals for all, resolving to advocate for and support federal and state legislative actions that ensure all students, regardless of income, have unimpeded access to school meals.
Which, by the way, that waiver, and I think I reported about that 2 months ago.
Yes.
That's going to expire by summer's end.
Quickly, yeah.
So I know Ilhan Omar tweeted out on that maybe like last month, I believe, within the month. But, you know, that waiver is going to expire, you know, by the end of next month. And so it's going to go back to the bureaucracy of, you know, free lunch, reduced lunch, you know, you got to pay for full. You know, which, considering inflation, right now, that's going to be a bad thing for schools.
Yeah. So
and students ultimately.
So fight for higher education, which resolves among other goals to create a higher education is affordable and accessible to all students. Cancel the student debt of all borrowers who are suffering because of the unjust way we finance higher education, and protect and expand the financial education and social supports that ensure a diverse range of students can access a college education and succeed. Living wage for all AFT members. It doesn't say. I wish it said what they thought that was. Calling for the Department of Education to study adjunct contingent pay and benefit equity, which is like healthcare and dental and stuff, right? Adjunct contingent faculty and the severe inequalities of pay and overall benefits they endure. Okay, gotcha. For like janitorial staff and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So this is the one that got me, Collin. Solidarity with Ukraine. Why does the American Federation of Teachers need to like support Ukraine? Does that make any sense to you?
If they're going to do that, why not other countries?
Sure. Right.
Why not Somalia?
Yes. Why not?
Yemen?
Right.
You know, like,
thank you.
Why Ukraine? Well, we know why Ukraine.
What about the teachers of Palestine, Collin? What about them? God forbid. Anyway, fulfilling the promise of education, opportunity, and equity. AFT and its affiliates will support practices to create safe and affirming environments for educators and students. Hopefully ones that, I don't know, don't have like mass murders in them probably would be a good start. And reproduction rights and the protection of women. Defends the rights and members of our members and all women, girls, and others who can become pregnant. Rejects forced birth and calls for the Senate and state lawmakers and voters to codify the right to choose abortion established by Roe v. Wade into federal and state law. Interesting, the AFT making a statement on that too. You know, so
I mean,
like, I feel you.
A lot of these resolutions, I think pretty much most of them.
Yeah.
Actually, there's more, so go ahead and I'll.
Well, I mean, it's just like school community violence, divest from fossil fuels and reinvest in workers. Like, this is all like, you know, mainly. I mean,
it's just
like
it's
frivolous.
All nice. It's all nice, but ultimately it's just fluff.
Yeah.
And, you know, and so like, I don't think it's just a nice thing to say that they're going to work on, but whether or not that's going to change anything or drastically change the climate of how teachers feel right now in schools, no.
Yeah. So this is going to be a short one for people, but you used to live in the UK, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so you kind of know what's happening over there. So, summer inferno. Europe suffers heat wave, wildfires, and drought. It's becoming the new normal in Europe. A summer of wildfires, drought, and extreme heat. For the first time, the United Kingdom issued a red warning because of scorching heat wave. So this is Kane Bordeaux from Courthouse News Service. They wanted to talk about wildfires, drought, and extreme heat are coming to turn many parts of Europe into a summer inferno. A slow-moving, high-pressure wave is transporting heat from North Africa. Of course, they're going to blame Africa. Over western and parts of Central Europe, leaving Portugal, Spain, France, and the United Kingdom sweltering. Firefighters in Spain, France, Greece, and Portugal also have been battling large wildfires that have forced thousands of residents and vacationers to evacuate. Hundreds of heat-related deaths have been reported. So, the heat wave was expected to extend in the Benelux countries, right? And Western Germany, Switzerland, and Northern Ireland, according to a European Centre for Medium-Range Weather Forecasts. In advance of the heat wave, the UK's Met Office issues its first red warning for extreme heat on Friday and warned that parts of southern England could have exceeded 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit this week. The British record high temperature is 38.7 degrees Celsius, 101.6 degrees Fahrenheit, set in 2019. On Monday, heat records were broken in Brest, a port city in Brittany in northern western France, and in Wales, where the temperature reached 35.3 Celsius, 95.5 Fahrenheit. In Gaugarden near Aberystwyth. Why are they giving me these Wales fucking... Like, I do not know Welsh. Like, I know the go, like that city that's like really long there, but I only know like the ending of it, you know? Exceeded the previous record high in Wales of 35.2 Celsius or 95.3. So in France, wildfires covering about 11,000 hectares, about 27,200 acres, Jesus, numbers, of woodland have been raging in the southwestern Gironde region since Tuesday. The famous Bordeaux wine region is in Gironde. France was scrambling to send more firefighters and equipment to quell the flames. In Spain, wildfires in Castilla y León, Extremadura, Catalonia, Galicia, and Andalusia have destroyed about 25,000 hectares, 61,800 acres. So, and claimed 2 lives, according to EFE, a Spanish news agency. Last week, wildfires broke out in Portugal, where temperatures reached as high as 47 degrees Celsius, 106 Fahrenheit on Thursday. By Monday, the fires in Portugal were coming under control, according to news reports. So, a lot of these places don't have AC, is part of the problem.
And people are like, no, let me be specific. Americans are like,
yes.
Oh, what's the big deal? It gets hot here.
Right.
So why is it such a big deal in Europe? Here's the thing in Europe. Europe is old. The infrastructure in Europe generally is much older, considering like a lot of the infrastructure in America. Well, I think especially like if you're in the Midwest and West Coast. Like if you're in the Northeast, you know, the infrastructure might be comparable, you know, to many places in Europe, like especially like Boston, New York, Philly, or whatever.
Well, and then sometimes even more so because they were bombed during the war, so they rebuilt everything.
Right.
So,
like a lot of these buildings are old, tight, very close together. And, you know, so the idea like, and windows are built differently, you know, like in like London, let's say. So it's not like you can necessarily buy like an AC unit and put it in your window. You know, and like try and cool yourself. Like that doesn't necessarily exist, you know, in the UK for sure. Number two, it never gets this hot.
No.
You know, like I remember as a kid, like the hottest that we'll ever get, like there'll be like a time maybe
80s,
in like
90s.
July, August, there might be a week where it hit like 90.
Right.
That would be it, you know, for the summer. You know,
so,
and then it will go down to something like 70, 80 degrees or something like that.
Right.
You know?
Like the next day, you know, and then it would rain, you know, and cool everything. So,
so the idea of like hitting like over 100 degrees is very unheard of, you know, but, you know, as the article said, and actually, I think I remember. Because I was in the UK back in 2019, and I think I do remember actually getting that hot or close to it when I was there. So,
and I know we've covered the Greek fire stuff before over on the island Crete, which is practically burning not that long ago. Like, and I think they just barely got that under control, and now it's burning again. So the scorching heat wave comes on top of dry conditions because it's been hot and ridiculous for a while. On Monday, the European Commission warned that about half of the bloc's territory is facing a risk of drought because of the lack of rain. Earlier this month, Italy declared a state of emergency in drought-stricken northern regions fed by the Po River, Italy's largest water reservoir. The Po Valley, which provides Italy with much of its agricultural production, is experiencing its worst drought in 70 years. Coldiretti, Italy's largest agricultural union, warned that the drought threatens more than 30% of national agriculture production and half of the farms in Po Valley, with devastating wildfires spread over large areas of Greece, Italy, and Turkey. In April, scientists with the Copernicus Climate Change Service reported that the summer of 2021 was the hottest on record for Europe, coming in at about 1 Celsius above the 1991 to 2020 average. Last summer saw Sicily mark a new record high in Europe, with the temperature hit 48.8 degrees Celsius, 119.8 Fahrenheit in Syracuse. So the EU scientist also said last year as a whole was much cooler than recent years. Scientists say human-caused global warming has already driven temperatures up globally by about 1 degree Celsius and made heat waves and drought more likely. Political tensions in Europe are heating up too, as the EU's large-scale efforts to tackle global warming through a massive European Green Deal are being upended by the war in Ukraine, which has forced Europe to delay plans to close some coal-fired plants and to seek new sources of natural gas and oil after it imposed sanctions on Russia. So, yeah. Nice to know that.
Anything about it.
No. No, we're not. Mix, I hope you didn't actually ban At Less Bones on Twitch. Or here, you know? That's not nice. Anyway, speaking of unions, Collin, we've seen stuff from Sharon Zhang at Truth Out before. You've seen some of her reporting.
Yes.
Indy usually pulls her stuff too. She does good stuff over there at Truth Out. So House staffers in 8 offices filed to form first ever congressional unions. So interesting little turn of events there, I feel like.
Tell me more, Reef.
Especially when you figure out who actually is forming the unions. So congressional staffers working in 8 House offices have filed petitions to form Congress's first ever unions after being granted the right to do so in the spring. So House reps voted to allow their staffers to unionize in a party line vote of 217 to 202 in May. The resolution, introduced by Rep. Andy Levin over in Detroit, right? No, Michigan. I think it is. But anyway, activated decades-old legislation that allowed workers to unionize, but that required a separate vote explicitly endorsing the practice. After the legislation was published in the Congressional Record, there was a 60-day probationary period, which the Congressional Worker Union said ended on Monday, meaning that the workers are now free to unionize office by office. Right, so they're going to have to hold votes again, essentially. So July 18th will go down as a historic day for congressional staff and our democracy, making the day our protected rights to organize and bargain collectively go into full effect, the union wrote in a statement. After several months of organizing to establish these protections for House staff, we joined 85 congressional workers in taking the next step in our organizing drive by filing for a union election in 8 offices in the U.S. House of Representatives. All 8 of the offices that are now petitioning to unionize belong to Dems. The offices that are unionizing are those of Representative Cori Bush, Chuy Garcia, Ro Khanna, Levins, right? Ted Lieu, AOC, and Ilhan Omar, and Melanie Stansbury. These offices will have to hold elections to decide whether or not to unionize. So Zhang writes, from Amazon and Starbucks to the halls of Congress to state legislators across our country, every worker deserves the protected right of freedom of association, joining together with their colleagues in solidarity to organize and bargain collectively for a better workplace, the union said on Monday. We look forward to voting enthusiastically, union yes, in the coming weeks, and sitting down at the bargaining table with our bosses. Lawmakers, including Bush, Garcia, Khanna, Levin, Lieu, and Omar, celebrated the filings. I am so proud of the staffers who made a historic move today, Levin said in a statement. It is the workers who ensure that this institution, the bedrock of our fragile and precious democracy, if we don't even have one of those, operates efficiently and serves the American people here in the Capitol and in every corner of our nation. My staff and staffers from 7 other House offices made history today as they became the first congressional offices ever to seek union recognition, Bush said on Twitter. Workers are stronger together, and I'm proud to stand in solidarity as they strive in making Congress a better workplace. Though there are Senate workers involved in the union, the Senate has not passed the corresponding resolution for its chamber, meaning that Senate staffers are currently barred from unionizing. Up until now, staffers have remained anonymous for fear of retaliation, which congressional workers in the Senate don't have protection against since the chamber hasn't passed the resolution. It's likely that the legislation wouldn't have the votes to pass in the Senate, with Republicans likely uniformly opposed and conservative Senator Joe Manchin having voiced his opposition shortly after the union drive was announced in February. When workers announced their campaign, they had been organizing to unionize for over a year. They say that while all congressional offices are different, congressional workers face widespread issues with low pay, long hours, and otherwise exploitative conditions. In May, before the resolution was passed, they wrote in an op-ed that their jobs are filled with cruel ironies. While they advocate for higher pay, inclusive policies, and recourse for sexual harassment for the public, many of them survive on food stamps and face abuse in the halls of Congress. Feel free to ask Tar Reed how being congressional aide goes. So, yeah, interesting stuff, I feel like. Poor working conditions not only affect the workers themselves, but also the entire country, for whom these staffers are working to write legislation and research bills that are coming to a vote. Workers say that there is a constant cycle of brain drain in Congress, as workers often move to lucrative jobs in the private sector that pay far more for their level of expertise. Lawmakers have acknowledged this phenomenon. Stansbury told Bloomberg Law early this year that she had heard senior staffers and fellow lawmakers imply that staffers are expendable, or a dime a dozen. Tara Reid can attest. So anyway, thoughts, Collin, before we get out of here?
Yeah, I think it makes excuse me, it makes sense that they want to see it. And I mean, like, I've heard these stories before, and like, especially living in DC, like, staff workers get paid shit.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, they do a lot of work and they get nothing to show for it. I think for many of them, it's the idea of just the access, and just as a stepping stone to move into like a private job in the private sector where they're able to make more money. But the idea to, let's say, be able to work with AOC, for example, would be kind of like a huge draw, you know, for them. But I think depending on the job, I think if you're maybe like an entry-level staffer or something like that in these congressional office, I think pays maybe something around 15.
Yeah.
You know, which in DC
is not much.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
It is nothing. Like, but then it's like, the other thing that people have to consider is who is able to get these jobs. Now, if you're a person of color, you know, who may be low income, you're not going to necessarily have that job. Or if you do, you have to have another job on the side in order to supplement the first.
Yeah.
You know, so I think overall, I think it's a good thing that they're looking to unionize. I hope, you know, I hope it goes well. But, you know, but I think it just kind of shows, I think, you know, the irony in government where, like, you know, even for Congress people, you know, like their pay is what, around, I'll say under 200,000 K, but they get to make a lot more through whatever deals they get, or through certain deal, like through fundraising deals that they might get as well, that they're able to boost their salaries a little bit. You know, congressional staff workers don't get those perks at all. So it's like they're literally just, you know, like, you know, just a hired robotic help. And basically, like, if they leave, then like people will very easily, you know, take their place just to say that they worked, you know, in the halls of Congress, you know. So we'll see how this goes. And I think we definitely will have to look at this story a lot closer, you know, moving forward. But, you know, yeah, I mean, it just goes on par for the course, you know, that even on government, that our workers are paid shit.
Yeah.
So,
which, you know, I'm glad that they're trying to unionize. We'll see how that goes. Be interesting to see how that affects legislation even. You know, but anyway, tomorrow, since Warren's out, I think there's some people trying to get something together for that. for Thursday. So please keep an eye on the INN Twitters to see if anything comes out with that. Friday, I will have my stream at 10. I've got some guests lined up, so that should be fun. So I'm trying to think if there's anything Saturday that I know for sure. But otherwise, INN on sorry, how do we miss that on Sunday night? And Tara Monday. So, you know, pretty good schedule, I think. But anyway, anything you want to tell the people before you head out, Collin?
Well, I'm going to be on your show, I think, Friday, right?
Yes, sir. I hope so. You know, I think that's one of the guests I had lined up.
But yeah,
and Jimmy, who's in the chat, should be coming as well.
So I have that. I'm going to try to edit, you know, this interview that I did months ago on my channel that I hope to have up within the next week or two. And then, you know, I have actually I got a contact with someone who wants to be interviewed. I believe I think he's either living in Rwanda or is Rwandan but lives here. But he's an artist essentially, so he's looking to, you know, get his craft out, brand out a little bit. So so I was asked to interview him to kind of talk more about his work,
right,
and his position and his unique position given, you know, within the African diaspora. So hopefully within the next week I'll be able to contact him and schedule a time to do a live stream, you know, on my channel. I would guess probably maybe around August. So yeah, definitely take you know, so hopefully I'll have a couple of things on my channel coming up, you know, within the next few weeks. So now that I'm able to be here a little bit before my job starts soon.
Cool. So anyway, all right. Well, I think that's our show for this evening. So as always, people, labels are bad. Please stay independent. That's INN out. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Happy Wednesday.